It's clear that people have been travelling across the regions this long weekend. I was on a bit of a road tour starting from Bathurst down to Taralga, Crookwell into Queanbeyan, Braidwood late last week, and it's clear that the hotels, the accommodations, the pubs, clubs, restaurants and cafes are all starting to fill up. In some cases, I've been told that the accommodation rates are as on par with this time last year, and it's clear when you're on the highways, people are exiting Sydney.
Well, that must be encouraging. Do you hear me, John? It must be encouraging for businesses out there, yeah.
And of course, the bushfires. Yeah, absolutely. We've done it tough because of drought and bushfires, and our small businesses have done it really, really difficult, and this means just an opportunity to fill those cash registers.
Yeah, can I just ask too, John, these protests that have taken place on the weekend, not just in Sydney, but capital cities right around the country and the world for that matter, but should the marches in Australia have gone ahead?
Look, everyone has the right to protest in our democracy, but we live in very unique times, and I condemn those marches on the weekend because we have just spent months and months putting lockdowns in place to protect all lives, to protect all of our communities. Businesses have been hurt, the economy has been smashed, unemployment in New South Wales in the April quarter, an extra 221,000 people lost their jobs. It was reckless, and that those protests should not have gone ahead, and that is something that we now have to look at in what we can do.
What are your thoughts of the police handling of protests in Sydney, and in particular the use of pepper spray towards some of those protesters towards the end of the day?
Look, I never comment on what the police need to do. They make decisions when they are confronted by individuals, and the police have all the tools, I suppose, to manage crowds, to manage protests. If they chose that was the appropriate measure, well, then I'm supportive of that.
Yeah. So you don't believe that they were heavy-handed at all?
That's always the first accusation of our police. It's always heavy-handed. I'm confident that our police, our men and women, make the right call in very tough circumstances, and let's see what comes from that.
Well, the problem, I guess, for these protests that have gone ahead, and everyone believes and should believe that we have a right to protest, but the problem is it's come at a very sensitive time for not just the world, but for Australia. How do you now tell residents and how do you tell restaurants that they have to have restrictions to the amount of people when you've just had tens of thousands of people gathering outside, and potentially spreading?
Yeah, I feel that we've had 3 months of messaging gone out the window. Clearly, we've told people to stay home, to stop the spread, to abide by the social distancing rules. And then all of a sudden on the weekend, what has occurred is a breach of those rules. Everyone has a right to protest, but not in this time. This COVID pandemic is not something that we can take for granted. It is something that actually is pausing and holding our economy to ransom. And on the weekend, it's difficult. And it's a tough message, but we'll work with our communities who've done it right up to this point. But we are going to be lifting restrictions at some point. On the weekend, let's hope there's no spike because of the protest.
Do you believe that the crowds should be allowed into football now? Because the standard has been set, right?
Well, we should be able to increase patrons to pubs, clubs, restaurants, or even crowds at the footy based on social distancing rules. The protest in itself, they admitted that they could not actually abide by social distancing rules. So I'm not going to allow the protest on the weekend to determine what happens going forward. We are able to lift restrictions for the footy, for instance. That'll be done under the social distancing rules, not what was a loose protest, no responsibility by the organisers, most importantly, putting the whole community at risk.
I guess now everyone's in a waiting game now when it comes to, what might have happened on the weekend. It usually takes, 1 to 2 weeks, for a virus to get out. So if there is no outbreak, does this mean it should be open season?
Well, we still have to manage it. And look, if there is no outbreak, that sends a bit of data our way that's important about making decisions going forward. And let's see. I'd never tried to predict this information. There were days there where we thought we had no infections, and we had significant, especially in March. We've done a really good job as a society. But yeah, you're right. It'll take 10 to 14 days to see the results from the weekend. But I'll still look at approaching my role along with my task force team in how we lift restrictions, and we'll do that with the science in front of us.
And if there is an outbreak, then I mean would that cause us to take a big step backwards?
What we've said in the past is if there are outbreaks, we'll try and do that at a local level and manage it at a local level. We cannot afford to lock down the economy and shut down businesses and lose more jobs.
Okay, John, just finally, our sources at Fox Sports say that you might be interested in running for a gig at the NRL to join your mate Peter V'landys. Is that true?
Mate, I'm the Deputy Premier of New South Wales. I'm fighting for the code, but I'm fighting for sport. I'm fighting for restoring the economy. I think for me that's the most important part of my job at the moment. And I've said I've got till 2023 as Deputy Premier, and we'll see how we go from there.
That's not a denial, John.
Well, look, I don't make decisions about what the future looks like for me. You know, I chose not to run in Eden Monero. I've sort of said up front earlier that 2023 state election is something I'm not really considering. Therefore, I've got to make some future decisions, but far too early today to make decisions about the future.
Okay, so did Peter V'landys offer you the job then? And what job was it?
No, not at all. There's been no job offer at the NRL. I think this is just speculation because I've been fighting so hard to see the footy return, and how good was it on the weekend?
Well, not so good for the Raiders, though.
No, I got a nice text from Ricky last night, and he was a bit upset with the defence of the team. And but look, they've had a great start to the season, and there's a long way to go.